running now. All right, thank you so much for joining us again. We're back at it again with mental health Wednesday discussions. I have another pretty big topic. It's a continuation of boundaries and specific how to navigate through when someone breaks those boundaries. Do you want to kind of summarize what the survey was about, Miss Laura?
Yeah, absolutely. I did a boundaries recap with our students, just reminding them that boundaries are our abilities to say yes and no to things that relate to our bodies, our time, our possessions, our energy. So the things that are ours, we have the right to say yes and no to for lots of things. And so it starts to make a lot of sense when we can say, if it's ours, we have the right to say yes or no in regards to what other people want from us. And when people break our boundaries all the time. You know, I might not want to share my chips with you. I would prefer to say no, but I'm afraid you'll get mad at me. I'm afraid I'll lose my friendship. So my boundaries are pushed and I end up giving you some of my chips, even though I didn't really want to. So I talk about boundaries that are pushed and then boundaries that are just straight up broken and ignored. Like if I say, please don't come into my room unless you knock, I just expressed my boundary. And then you just walk on in, you just broke it. So now what am I supposed to do? I'm mad, I'm upset. How do I talk to you about it to make sure that my boundaries aren't broken again? So that is a pretty big topic. And I really want our students to know that they have the right to set boundaries because these are their things. If it's their school computer, if it's their shoes, their sweater, their snacks, their body, we don't want people to violate any of the things that they have.
Yeah, I think I, briefly mentioned a couple things the last time we had a discussion about this, but I mean, there are different scenarios that, those boundaries can be broken, whether it's like things that, keep happening over and over, and then maybe I just like blow up, or something that was really big, that was just a big boundary line that someone crossed, and then it really, really affected me terribly. Like I was really hurt by that, whatever that was said or what was done or both. So I think in both regards, I think it was really nice to be able to read and listen and hear some of the better ways to actually tackle when someone breaks those boundaries. But I think one thing for sure, it's not healthy to just like all of a sudden hold in a lot of different things over time and then just out of nowhere just let that bubble pop and explode on that person, because it's going to become toxic at some point. So I think it's incredibly important to think about how those boundaries are set, what those boundaries mean to you, and then again, furthermore, how to tackle those boundaries when they are crossed, how to communicate that with the other person.
Yeah, material boundaries, I feel like, is such a good one because it's what people understand the most. They start to really get like, if this is my thing, I don't want to give it to you or share, or and that's my right because it's mine. For example, with the chips sharing, if I don't actually want to share chips with you, but you ask every single day that we're at school for you to have my chips, I'm going to start to build resentment for the fact that I didn't say no the first time. And now you keep coming back, even though I didn't want that. And then I just blow up and I'm like, don't you know, S, I've never wanted to share my chips with you. You could say no. I never knew that. Thanks for telling me. Now I know. So it's really important to be able to say no to people and also to be able to hear no. You might be sad that I don't share my chips with you anymore, but it would be nice if you could understand that it's my snack. So I have a right to say no.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important, I think, when you explain yourself too, why it's important to you.
Yeah.
What's the significance of that boundary? What does it mean to you? How do you feel? How does it make you feel? And be completely honest. I think, one of the toughest challenges in terms of boundaries is like the parent to to a child relationship.
Yeah,
I
great.
think especially when I think of my mom, sometimes, you know, there was a cultural difference. There is a cultural difference even to this day. There is generation generational difference as well. She was raised in a different time period than I was. So, you know, norms back then were different from norms today. So concerning those things, I think it's best to be aware of that and also be assume the best of each other. So I maybe have rushed a lot of times when I was in my teens to react by saying something nasty or doing something nasty toward my mom. It wasn't in the best of hers or mine interest. And I think when I look back, I should have assumed the best of my mom. My mom was only trying to help me. She thought it was better for this to be said or this to be done. So I think as a child, sometimes that's where we just gotta step back, and it's easier to kind of react um, in a way where it's very volatile.
Mhm.
And to be honest, I don't know if you agree, Miss Laura, for you, but back then I feel like maybe, you know, being younger and not being, for me personally, not being cognizant of my mom, I think I treated my friends like my family and my family like my friends, if that makes sense. So um, I think we have to appreciate the fact that our parents or guardians are there because they love us, they want the best for us, and we got to be careful how we communicate.
Yeah. So that is such a good point, is that whenever I'm talking about boundaries, it's really hard to have boundaries with people who are older than you or have more authority or power. So for example, if you were my teacher or my parent and you asked me to do something and I didn't want to do it, for example, clean my room. Now we're in a power struggle because I don't want to clean my room. And if I say it's my boundary that I don't clean my room, my parents are not going to understand that. they're like, this is my house. And so you have to clean your room. So you can get into a serious power struggle. And boundaries, I think, in that regard, when it comes to people who are older or people have more authority, like teachers, and who can provide consequences, then I really just want to go back to the fact that boundaries are able to just like keep you safe and happy and comfortable. And so at the point where someone's asking you to do something that makes you feel unsafe, then absolutely have a boundary, right? Like I do want to teach our students and our young adults that they have ownership over their bodies, for example. And just because someone is older or intimidating or in a person that you know, if they want you to do something that you don't want to do that makes you feel unsafe, absolutely have a boundary. Is asking to clean your room something that makes you feel unsafe? No, that's a pretty low risk. And so that one's tough. You get into a power struggle. But boundaries are here to keep you safe from adults, from other people your age. And so I hear what you're saying, that it's hard to assert your wants and needs when they're conflicting with your parents or your teachers. It's like, I don't want to do my homework. Well, then your consequence is that you don't get a good grade. And that's a boundary. That's a rule of engagement for the relationship. So yeah, mainly doing my homework is not an unsafe thing. So always check in with an adult, check in with a trusted adult to say, you know, this person asked me to do this and it made me feel uncomfortable. And if that's something that is the difference between safe and unsafe and a trusted adult can tell you, then we can visit that conversation about boundaries at the time.
Yeah, and again, that communication where you're assuming the best is always the best route, I would say, from my personal opinion. You know, my mom calls me still to this day every so often to nag about this or that with for me because I'm the oldest son as well. So there's the dynamic is different too. So it's understanding all the variables, all the things that are going around with the situation as well, understanding everything about that person, what influenced them. Those are things that we can be aware of when it's someone that we know. That's the same thing with our friends, although our relationships are different with our friends. You know, parents are just as much, or guardians or family members are just as important to understand who they are, what impacted them to make them think a certain way or say or do certain things.
Yeah.
So That's all we want you guys to consider when we communicate, and to, you know, safely navigate those conversations. Now, it is a different situation when it's like the most random person, you've never met this person, and like whether it's a physical, emotional, mental boundary, those are things that you have to, you know, build a conscience around, in
Yeah.
terms of like, where are you? Why are they doing this? Why are they saying this? And I think we talked about identity as one of those factors, among other things, the times, the influences in the societal norms, the cultural aspects of maybe, okay, I come from this background, you come from that background. You may think this is okay to say or do, where in my culture, that is not acceptable. Those are things that we want to consider. But again, nobody's goal is to get out there and just wreak havoc and start conversations to end up in something where it's violent or whatnot. Unfortunately, there are, you know, some individuals that, you know, are targeting that kind of result, but in most cases, I don't believe that people are trying to go out there purposefully to do that. But it's good for you to be aware of those things, even with the most random person out on the streets, or in even grocery shopping or whatnot, and to try to navigate as safely as possible in that scenario.
Yeah, a lot of our students say that with strangers, for example, they have really much stronger boundaries. They would not let a stranger hug them. That makes them feel uncomfortable, unsafe, unhappy. If you are in a bad mood and your mom tries to come and hug you, you might be more flexible. You're like, okay, yeah, I'll take a hug, even though I'm not in a good mood, because you're flexible with someone that you know. And so when it comes to our boundaries and what we currently want in the moment, whether it's to not be hugged or whatever, I think there's a difference between feeling push and pressure for your boundaries when you say no, and then someone breaks your boundary, right? And so I wanted to go over some of the things that you could say when people start to push your boundary. And I think that that is a good one for when people are experiencing possibly like peer pressure. So in the classroom or at school, if someone says like, hey, let me copy your homework, I don't want to. I feel really uncomfortable. I'm scared. What if Mr. S finds out that you're copying my homework? Oh, right. So I don't actually want to give this person my homework to copy. How do I say no? You can say, I don't want to do that right now. That's not something I want to do. I feel uncomfortable with that. I can't do that right now. I'm not going to let you copy my homework, but can I help you? So like you'll say no to one thing and yes to another, or you can ask somebody else. So there are lots of ways when people are trying to push and pressure you, come on, let me copy your homework. It's only once, I'll only do it this one time. I only need one problem. Like no is no. Like I don't want you to copy my homework. No. And so there are lots of things that we can practice in the back of our mind to say like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give this to you. And if they're mad about it, that shouldn't matter, because what matters for me is that my homework isn't copied.
That makes me think of peer pressure most of all, when there's more than one person that just keeps just drilling at you like, come on, do this. And it's funny that you brought that up, because this past week during spring break, I had a conversation with some of my college friends, and there was a situation that I couldn't remember that well, but they remembered well. And then when they started describing that situation to me, they felt bad about my roommates and my friends are pushing me to do something that I didn't want to do. And I kept saying no. I think I said it at least 3 times. And he was telling me like, yeah, we should have understood that. And we were just too caught up in the moment, and we felt bad. And that could have really harmed our relationship. So I think, although you're, in the moment you might think these are my friends that are telling me to do this, and I don't want to do it, but they seem to want me to do it or say something. But if you feel uncomfortable with it, don't be afraid to say no.
Right.
Okay? You have every right to say no to yourself. And if you have to say it several times, make it very clear that that is the case. If it becomes a situation where they're just not listening and it's not going your way, I think, for me, removing yourself from that situation is probably going to be the best, because otherwise, if you've already told them no, for example, three times, that's a lot. I think that's made very clear by
you
then.
should be respected by having told someone no once. That's how you know someone respects you, is you say no and they understand. But if you're being pushed, yeah, 3 times.
Yeah, and I think in that case, I think, Miss Laura, you also talked about, reaching out to somebody for help as well. So I think that's also really important. It's, doing that or saying no doesn't make you a weak person overall. It actually makes you a stronger person, that you're understanding that this is making you uncomfortable and you're doing something about it. You're standing up for yourself. So we really want to encourage students to stick up for what is right to them, what makes them feel comfortable, and not being afraid to do so.
Yeah, so in this situation with the copying homework, say this person's really pushing my boundaries and I say, no, you can't copy my homework. And then they pull my homework out from my backpack when I'm in the bathroom to copy it. So now they've just completely broken what I said they could not do. I said no, and they did it anyways. And that's a very common statement. There are probably so many times that we say no and someone does something anyways. I know our students have that with their siblings or with their friends. So, after someone has actually really broken that boundary, then there are lots of ways to address it. Many of our students today in our mental health survey, I asked, what do you do when somebody breaks your boundary? And overwhelmingly, students said that they will feel upset and they will not address it. That they'll just say maybe like, what the heck, man, I told you not to do that. Or, they'll take their homework back and then never actually do anything for the person that broke that boundary. So some things that they can do is they can say, remember, I told you not to do this. You reiterate the boundary. Or you can say how it made you feel. I feel really disrespected right now that you did that. Don't do that again. Or you can let them know it's not okay that you took my homework without me knowing. I already said no. It's a lot of kind of repeating the same thing, but it is really important to let that person know, confront them that it's not okay that they broke a boundary. And lastly, like you'd said, because you didn't listen to me when I said no, now I have to tell someone because I need help. You took my homework and you copied it when I said no. Now I have to go and tell Mr. S because he's going to think that I let you copy it when I didn't want you to. We all need that kind of help when our boundaries are broken. We can talk to our friends, to our family members, to trusted adults. But when people are doing things without your permission, when it comes to your belongings, like what's the first thing you want to say? Mom, he took my toy, he broke it. You need help. You need help so that that person can get that consequence. So I don't consider it, like telling or snitching. You need help. Something was done without your permission. It's hurt your feelings. It's made you upset. And so if someone breaks your boundaries, you can confront them on your own or you can ask for help.
And this is why one of our school values is the value of integrity, doing what is right. And ultimately, what could happen on the flip side, if you actually stand up for yourself and follow through by saying no and explaining all those things and communicating as best as possible, that person, in effect, might understand what they did was wrong. And it's a learning opportunity for them. And if, for example, if they are a friend of yours, they might realize, wow, okay, I really hurt their feelings. I really did something wrong. I crossed the line. And they seem like somebody that has a lot of moral value. They have principles. And so they might hold you in higher regard and might seek to correct that wrong. And that strengthens your relationship. So there's that resolve there that happens as an aftermath. And that's a positive result, not a negative result. It doesn't always have to be negative. I think when people say no, they always think that it's always going to end bad. And that's not always the case. A lot of the times when we say no, we stand up for ourselves, what is right.
Yep.
You know, people understand why and what is behind it all, and they try to correct themselves. And they see this is gonna make us better. This is gonna make the relationship stronger. So that's why I would say for me, like when those moments have happened, yeah, I've, you know, personally, I've lost a lot of friends because I've stood up for myself and they crossed the line. But in other cases, I've also gained a stronger friendship, a stronger relationship. And in many cases, those are lifelong friendships that I will continue to cherish. And like right now, I do cherish and love a lot of those friends. So I think it's very important to have those.
Yeah, it's, I really want to make sure that I have friends that when I say no, they're going to listen to me the first time and that they won't be hurt by it. If I asked you for a snack and you said, no, this is all I have to eat today, I'll say, oh, okay, I totally understand. I'll go and, get myself a different snack. But if I continue to say, come on, S, like I know that that's your only snack, but at least you have one and I don't have any, and I keep pushing you and pressuring you and you keep saying no, and then I go ahead and put my hand in your Cheeto bag, do you really want to be friends with me at that point? Like, probably not. We really want people to respect our boundaries. We'll feel better for ourselves as a person who can stand up for ourselves and who's deserving of respect if we can implement our boundaries. And for example, if I did break that boundary and you're like, Lar, I don't want to be friends with you anymore if you keep doing that, well, that's my consequence for my behavior. I should know that disrespecting people's boundaries could lose me friends.
Absolutely. And in closing, I think the one thing I do want to say is that we consider the circumstances we've gone through the situation with the pandemic for over a year now. So people's sensitivities are on a high. Okay, so people might be more sensitive or more reactive to things you say or do. So we want to be conscious of that. A lot of folks are going through hard times. We've talked about, grief, loss, all those things. We talked about toxic relationships. We've talked about so many different factors from what the pandemic has kind of caused us to, dig ourselves in somewhat of a hole. And a lot of us are obviously still trying to dig out of that hole. So we always want to have that lending hand and understand each other as best as possible and approach as softly and gently as possible to be stronger people. So I think that's a special circumstance that we have to consider. So please be aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Please remember to talk to a trusted adult. Any one of us, your teachers or staff at Blanca would be happy to talk to you about this more or refer you to me.
And now with some students back on campus, there's a lot of different things that you can participate in person if you are some of those students that are back on campus. But all the resources are still available to you. We have a wonderful counselor, Laura, like I said, and your teachers, and a bunch of resources if you're not comfortable with those provided. So we really love having students and parents dropping off students back on campus. The school year is almost over. Stay strong. We're in it together. We have a few more months of this academic year. We'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.
Yep, take care. See ya.